All right. Okay. So we've been talking about, well, the Orthodox Vaishnavas was the last big topic, this idea of accepting God with form or without form. Always understand that God is bigger and greater than any set of attributes that you can give to her, and that uh, you should never calcify an attribute of the divine and beat anybody else over the head with it. You should always understand that God is everything and more, and that He has all of us exactly where He wants or she wants us to be. And it is up to you in your earnestness and your sincerity to be there and to go forward to transcend all of that. So now he's talking to one of the gentlemen here who is a Vaishnava and does have that kind of absolutist approach to his ideas, not really wanting to uh, let go of some of those perspectives. And the master is having this conversation with them. He says the Kartabhajas group the devotees into four classes: the Pravartika, the Sadhaka, the Siddha, and the Siddha of the Siddha. The Pravartika, the beginner, puts the mark of his religion on his forehead, wears a string of beads around his neck, and observes other outer conventions. Right? So that's when they, according to their little system that they've set up for determining the range of devotees, the beginner, there's lots of externals to religion. A lot of people will wear their Rudraksha beads. They'll like the marks on their forehead. They'll wear a certain color of clothing, or add a certain shawl, or all these different things. And those signs, are very important. I remember when my best friend Bill first started getting involved with a group in San Diego. He was very particular about the size of his asana and that it was composed of silk, and that that there was an animal hair uh, piece that went over the top of it, and he had a bead bag, that quote protected it from bad energies, and so lots of externals and lots of dressings are important in the beginning, because in the beginning, most of us, when we approach the divine, we're approaching it head on, from the inside out. We're we're meeting God as a person. We're practicing religion as a thing. And then he says the second one, the sadhaka, the struggling devotee, does not care so much for elaborate rites. An example of this class is the Baal. The Siddha, the perfect, firmly believes that God exists, and the Siddha of the Siddha, the supremely perfect, like Chaitanya, not only has realized God, but also has become intimate with him and talks with him all the time. This is the last limit of realization. Right? So these four classes: the beginner, where everything's external; the struggling sadhaka, who's really just trying to grow and to keep his practice going and do all of the little do's and don'ts that he's been taught or she's been taught. And then the perfect, who has known God, is sure that God exists experientially, not just through a mental belief or statement or conviction, but an experiential awareness of the presence of the beloved, of the divine. And then the final, the supreme of the supreme that he's talking about here, that person who has realized God, right? So is a knower of the divine. And again, this knowing is not relational information packed into the segments of mind. It's this knowledge is the knowledge that's spoken about in Satchitananda. It's that infinite wisdom, that infinite being, that infinite loving, which is core to our nature, and is not referential. It is spontaneously available to us as it's needed to manage the moment perfectly, as it were. And so this last perfect of the perfect, the Siddha of the Siddha, is one who actually dances with the divine. That awareness of God is always present. The forgetfulness is no longer there. They can't really be fooled by Maya anymore. They know the extension of themselves. They know that this body mind is just like the corner of the napkin of who they are, and that awareness never leaves them. And so their dance with God is wild. Their dance with God is all inclusive. They have dropped off most of the things that you and I still cling to because our minds have not come to that level of purity, that level of pushing me and mine, of renouncing me and mine, which is what the pure mind means. It doesn't mean a mind not sexual or a mind that doesn't steal. It's not at that level. Purity is the absence of me and mine for our concern. So those are the four groups that the Kartapajas have broken devotees into. And Ramakrishna continues on. There are many kinds of spiritual aspirants. Those endowed with sattva perform their spiritual practices secretly. Sattva is being well balanced. The three elements that create this universe are sattva, rajas, and tamas. Tamas is that tendency toward inertia, non-movement, laziness, dullness, whatnot, decay. Those are the qualities of tamas. And then rajas is that great activity, pride, egoism, great zest, lots of colors, vibrant. That's rajas. And then sattva isn't really anything in and of itself. It's more the perfect balance between action and inertia. It's a perfect balance maintained by that spiritual wisdom, or that wisdom of our nature within. So those endowed with sattva perform their spiritual practices secretly because they're not connected to or interested in any egoism, any name or fame, anything about this particular arrangement. The body mind is not really their concern. Their shrine and their life happens in the shrine of the heart, deep within. And so they're not worried about the externals, and they're not really concerned about performing religion outside. Aspirants endowed with rajas exhibit outward pomp, a string of beads around their neck, a mark on their forehead, an ochre robe, a silk cloth, a rosary with a gold bead, and so on. They are like stall keepers advertising their wares with signboards. So a great demonstration of their spirituality. Not to say this in an insulting way, but this brings such a vivid memory to me, which was it was great fun, but it was just a crazy experience. I went up to Holy Cross Monastery, a Christian monastery, Benedictine monastery, and lived with them for a year to study and to share some of these ideas of Vedic Christianity with a group of very senior monks there, because I didn't want to develop an idea that was blasphemous to a Christian. And so I studied with them. And they really took me in and really let me be a part of the monastery, let me live in the cloistered and to be cloistered with them. And so a wonderful camaraderie and a wonderful feeling of openness and respect amongst them. And they allowed me one time to help serve communion on a Sunday morning. And it was a special meeting, a special mass, I guess. And so I had to wear these vestments, which I had never even seen in my life. I grew up a fundamentalist Christian, so we didn't have any of that finery. And so when I saw this outfit that I had to put on, with the big quilted brocade, green silk, bright colors, coming all down, and sashes and belts and the whole 9 yards. I mean, it was exactly what he's talking about here, just this glitter of religion. It was very hard for me because I couldn't take it seriously. I had never had that image, of myself, and had never seen that kind of, I don't know what you would call it, that kind of costumery around religion before. So when he says this, I can see that. Aspirants endowed with rajas exhibit outward pomp, a string of beads around their neck, a mark on the forehead, an ochre robe, silk cloth, the rosary with gold beads, and so on, like stall keepers advertising their wares with signboards. All religions and all paths call upon their followers to pray to one and the same God. Therefore, one should not show disrespect to any religion or to any religious opinion. It is God alone who is called Satchit Ananda Brahman in the Vedas, Satchit Ananda Krishna in the Puranas, and Satchit Ananda Shiva in the Tantras. It is one and the same Satchit Ananda, right? So this is a very beautiful lesson for how we learn our oneness, right? We had a little bit of a conversation yesterday about this. What is it that draws all of us into a unity? It's not sameness. It's not that we all practice the same religion and have the same concept of God and the same opinions and the same uh, uh, requirements in our religion. We learned from Jesus in his last prayer on the planet that the oneness that he was talking about for all of us was not that we would all become one follower. It was love. Love is the cord that binds the variety into a unity, maintaining the variety, maintaining all the difference, because God is manifesting in billions of trillions of different ways. That in every person is a manifestation of God. The only difference between you and a Jesus or you and a Buddha is power, the amount of power in your manifestation. A Buddha, a Jesus, a Ramakrishna, they have a great deal of power in their manifestation and a great deal of purity in that manifestation, an absolute absence of me and mine. And so they can actually give spiritual experience. They can actually pass on spiritual experience. You and I are like clay mice compared to the avatar who's a clay elephant. That's from Ramakrishna's description. And so, the difference is just in the formation of the clay. Everything is clay, right? And so what is that clay for us as practitioners? It's Satchitananda. It's our ability to love and be loved that draws us all together. It's our ability for it's our nature of wisdom, our ability to grow and to transcend our faults and to disidentify with our partial understandings of ourselves. That is common to all people, and our isness, the very sense of our being, is something that we all share. So that cord that's going to tie all of us together is that recognition of divine love, divine wisdom, and divine presence in each and every person, regardless of how that Satchitananda is manifesting through that mind, through that body, through that instance. But to always, when you see people, and we do this by seeing it in ourselves. That's why our practice is so important. Because in order to see God in others, you're going to have to see that divinity in yourself and recognize it. In order to love someone else, you're going to have that love for the self within you. In order to be wise, you have to find that wisdom within yourself, because we have no way of knowing anybody else out there. We can have a lot of conversations, but you will still never be able to give me the contents of your mind. And I'll never be able to sort through them, like my mother's purse, and find out who you are. So what does that mean? What happens then? Well, what that means is that I project onto you what I know of myself. When I see a certain facial expression, my mind goes in and ruffles through the cabinet in there and says, oh, when I make that face, this is what I mean. So when that person's making that face, that must be what they mean. And so we project everything that we know of ourselves on others. And of course, that's where a lot of misunderstanding comes from. We assign motives to things that people are doing that may or may not be correct, that may or may not be true, and we don't know. And really, that's the process of friendship, the process of relationship, is kind of trying to get that understanding of each other as pure as possible. And so the best way, according to the sages, is know yourself, know who you are, which is why the first question of Vedanta is, who am I? What am I? Because by knowing who you are, you will know who everybody else is. And from there comes realization. There are different sects of Vaishnavas. That which is called Brahman in the Vedas is called Alak Niranjan by one Vaishnava sect. Alak means that which cannot be pointed out or perceived by the sense organs. According to this sect, Radha and Krishna are only two bubbles of the Alak. According to the Vedanta, there is no incarnation of God. The Vedantists say that Rama and Krishna are but two waves in the ocean of Satchitananda. In reality, they are not two. There is only one. A man may call on God by any name. If he is sincere in his prayer, he will certainly reach him. He will succeed if he has longing. As Sri Ramakrishna spoke these words to the devotees, he was overwhelmed with a divine fervor. Coming down to partial consciousness of the world, he said to Balaram's father, "Are you the father of Balaram?" All sat in silence. Balaram's aged father was silently telling his beads, doing his japam there in the corner. The master to M and the others, "Well, these people practice so much japa and go to so many sacred places. But why are they like this? Why do they make no progress? In their case, it seems as if a year consists of 18 months. Once I said to Harish, what is the use of going to Benares if one does not feel restless for God? And if one feels that longing, then this very place is Benares. They make so many pilgrimages and they repeat the name of God so much, but why do they not realize anything? It is because they have no longing for God. God reveals himself to the devotee if only he calls upon him with a longing heart. At the beginning of a yatra performance, much light-hearted restlessness is to be observed on the stage. At that time, one does not see Krishna. Next, the sage Narada enters with his flute and sings longingly, "O Govinda, O my life, my soul." Then Krishna can no longer remain away and appears with the cowherd boys, right? So here, Ramakrishna is just bemoaning this roteness of religion. That we sit there and set our timer to do our meditation, and we sit there and we tell our beads, in the exact way, like this. But the heart's not there. The longing, the missing of God is not there. In the beginning, it could be driven by fear, oh my God, I don't want to go to hell, or oh my God, I don't know what happens when I die, or, oh my God, I don't know anything. I'm just afraid of the unknown. All these things. So in the beginning, fear leads us and we go forward, and that's fine for that stage. But at some point, it has to go beyond that, and we begin to fall in love with God. And that comes from just living with the awareness of the presence of God. The imagination is very important in the beginning. In the beginning, everything starts as imagination, right? But that doesn't mean it's unreal in that, well, in that sense. It doesn't mean that it's unreal, right? Every building outside my window started in imagination. This chair I'm sitting in started in someone's imagination. So imagination is the seed of manifestation. And so when you imagine God, imagine the presence, yes, at the beginning, it's just an imagination, just an imaginary friend, as it were. But in a while, and that while depends on your sincerity and earnestness, in a while, that presence becomes inexplicable. It becomes apparent that it's not just imagination. Mother inhabits that space. The divine enters into that space. And in time, that space makes room for your inner guru to manifest. You can hear your teacher through that voice. But this is all progression. This is all as we practice, as we go forward. But this longing must be there. And this longing is just the recognition of the presence. Once that grace gives you a touch of that love, gives you even just a split second of an awareness of that love, you'll be like a peacock coming back for his bead of opium, like Ramakrishna says. If you give a peacock a piece of opium at 4 p.m., Ramakrishna says you can know the next day at 4 p.m. that peacock's going to be at your front door wanting another piece of that opium. And so this is just a pointer at what religion should become, what spiritual life should become for you. This relationship with divine is not practice. It's not an exercise. It's not a set of beliefs. It's not a philosophy. It's the truth of this experience of being. And so just by having that in our awareness, and just by practicing awareness, it will self-manifest. It will become self-evident to you. In my favorite words of Swami Tattva-Mayananda, that which is obvious will become apparent to you. Right? They make so many pilgrimages, they repeat the name of God so much, but why do they not realize anything? It is because they have no longing for God. God reveals himself to the devotee if he only calls upon him with a longing heart. Right? Tuesday, October 16th, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna was in his room with Rakal, Balaram's father, Beni Pal, M, Mani Malik, Ishan, Kishori, and other devotees. Master, liberal-minded devotees accept all the forms of God, Krishna, Kali, Shiva, Rama, and so on. Balaram's father, yes, sir. It is like a woman recognizing her husband, whatever clothes he wears. Master, but again, there is a thing called Nishta, single-minded devotion. When the gopis went to Mathura, the gopis are those cowherd girls in the story of Krishna. When the gopis went to Mathura, they saw Krishna with a turban on his head. At this, they pulled down their veils and said, "Who is this man? Where is our Krishna with the peacock feather on his crest and the yellow cloth on his body?" Hanuman also had that unswerving devotion. He came to Dwaraka in the cycle of Dwapara. Krishna said to Rukmini, his queen, "Hanuman will not be satisfied unless he sees the form of Rama. So to please Hanuman, Krishna assumed the form of Rama. But my dear sir, I am in a peculiar state of mind. My mind constantly ascends from the absolute to the relative, and again ascends from the relative to the absolute. The attainment of the absolute is called the knowledge of Brahman, right? This absolute means this unchanging reality. It's the best way I like to talk about this. It's this moment pure in its moment. In this moment, there's no change. In this moment, there's no movement, right? That comes from our egoism. And the way we've talked about this in the past is it's like in the movie. In a movie, there's actually no movement, right? There's only that still frame, one after the other. The reason there's movement is because we've seen one and we hold that one in our mind, and then we see the next one and it's different. And the mind explains that difference by movement, by creating the idea of movement. It defines that difference. And so our ego self is always sitting a split second in the past, right? On the last set of sensual input or whatever, last state of mind. It sits at the edge of that and looks at the present moment and sees difference. And there's a portion of the mind that creates narrative to explain that difference. And that explanation is your worldview, your idea of yourself, your personality, all of the things that you think that you know. And so what we're trying to do is drop that egoism, which will free us from sitting on the edge of the past, and to be in the moment, right? Because the moment can't be perceived because it is. Perception takes time. As soon as you perceive the moment, it's past. right? And so this practice of the presence, this practice of being in the moment, be here now, really requires the absolute abnegation of the ego self, right? The story of who you are. You have to let go of the story of who you are so that you can be who you are. And that's why I like that phrase, that we find out who we are when everything is silent, when nothing tells you who you are, not your mind, not your body, not your experience, not your memories. When nothing is telling you who you are, finally you will know who you are, simply by the isness, not because of a description. So the attainment of this absolute, of this absolute unchanging reality, is called the knowledge of Brahman, but it is extremely difficult to acquire. A man cannot acquire the knowledge of Brahman unless he completely rids himself of his attachment to the world, right? His attachment to his thinking. Actually, if we take it a degree farther, because the world, we don't live in a world, we live in a mind, right? We've talked about that at length. And so our attachments is to thoughts. Some ideas we think we like, some we don't like, some we think describe us, some we don't think describe us. Anything that we have that affects or reverberates with our sense of I is an attachment. It's something that we hold on to. All of our memories are attachments, right? All of our past is an attachment. If we hadn't attached, it simply would have arisen out of nothingness, come into being for its split second, and then subsided back into emptiness again. But our interest in it, our attachment to it, grabs it and stores it in memory to share our immortality with it. We didn't want that particular molecule of water to pass through with the rest of the stream, so we grabbed it. And all of those things that we grab out of the stream of the moment become our history, become our attachments, right? And they are what creates desire. All of those attachments, those memories and things that we've held on to, they prevent us from seeing the moment as perfect. And they create desire. And because of that desire, we have to create future. Right? We have to create a plan for manifesting the desire into the present moment. And that requires a plan. And a plan requires a future. And so that's where our past and our future comes from. Our past is our attachments and our future is our desires. And we get stuck because we're constantly bouncing back and forth between our attachments and our desires, and are no longer able to be in the present, no longer able to be at peace, to be content, to be sound, full and still, to experience Brahman, to have the knowledge of this unchanging absolute, Satchitananda, right? To finally experience the noun of love, not the verb of love, to experience the noun of wisdom, not the verb of wisdom, to experience the noun of existence and not the verb of existence. So this is what he's talking about here. So unless we completely rid ourselves of our attachment to the world, when the Divine Mother was born as the daughter of King Himalaya, she showed her various forms to her father. The king said, "I want to see Brahman." Thereupon the Divine Mother said, "Father, if that is your desire, then you must seek the company of holy men. You must go into solitude, away from the world, and now and then live in holy company. The manifold has come from the one alone, the relative from the absolute. There is a state of consciousness where the many disappears, and the one as well. For the many must exist as long as the one exists. Brahman is without comparison. It is impossible to explain Brahman by analogy. It is between light and darkness. It is light, but not the light that we perceive, not material light. Again, when God changes the state of my mind, when he brings my mind down to the plane of the relative, I perceive that it is he who has become all of these, the creator, Maya, the living beings, and the universe. Again, sometimes he shows me that he has created the universe and all living beings. He is the master, and the universe is his garden. He is the master, and the universe and all its living beings belong to him. That is knowledge. And I am the doer. I am the guru. I am the father. That is ignorance. This is my house. This is my family. This is my wealth. These are my relatives. This also is ignorance. And so this is why he started off telling us and sharing with us that, that all religions should be respected, all spiritual ideals should be respected, that we shouldn't hold on or cling to any individual part of it. And the reason for that is this, because he's telling us here that depending on where we are in our conscious awareness, we will get a different panorama of things. Like when you start your hike up a hill or a mountain, at the beginning you're in the trees and everything is very close and very particular. And that's how it is in spiritual life. Yes, you have to do it this way. Yes, it should be done like this. Yes, we believe this. Yes, we hold on to this. Because you're still in the trees and you haven't begun the ascent yet. You haven't gotten any transcendence. And so then you move on up that hill and you come to your first vista and you look out from halfway up the hill and you're like, wow, look at this. This is expansive. This is beautiful. And it's not any longer the particulars that are the focus and the main set. Now it's a set of principles. Look, there's a town over there. Oh, look, there's another mountain over there. Oh, look, there's a vast plain over there. So the world of principles becomes more important than the particular relationships, less so. They all kind of form a generalization. And then you get to the top of the mountain. And then you can look around and you see everything at once. And you realize, oh my God, there were a lot of different paths that come to this mountaintop from lots of different directions. And you begin to understand the wholeness of things, the relationship between all of the stuff that you were experiencing in the particular when you were your ego self. Now in your transcendent state, you're not so attached to a body mind. You've let go of your stories. You've let go of your desires. And from that perspective, you begin to see your humanity that is common amongst everyone. You begin to see that we are not so different and disparate. So it's like the more into ego that you go, the more differentiated everything is, the more particular everything is. And when that ego starts to die, you begin to see how big everything is, how unified everything is, how at one everything is. You can see over the trees, and you can even see over the mountaintop at that point. Right? And so he's saying these things that are the things that hold us into that particular. Did someone say something? That when we hold on to the particulars, that's the thing that prevents us from seeing the vista. When we have things like I'm the doer, right, which is of course that's the biggest one right there. All of a sudden, that one takes a while to see the truth of that, but that we are not the doer. But to have all these ideas about yourself, the only thing that you can say that's true about yourself are those three things, right? Satchitananda, I am wise, I am loving, I exist. Those are the three things. Anything else that you try to attach to that I is ignorance. It's a lie, right? I'm tired. No, the body's tired, right? I'm jealous. No, the mind is jealous. Right? You should never allow yourself to attach anything but those three descriptors to your I, to your sense of self. And even those will go in time because the I just won't hold anything at that point because it's busy holding everything, as it were. So this I'm a guru, I'm a father, it's ignorance. This is my house, this is my family, this is my wealth, these are my relatives. This also is ignorance because it requires separation, it requires other. Balaram's father, that is true, sir, master. As long as you do not feel that God is the master, you must come back to the world. You must be born again and again. There will be no rebirth when you can truly say, "Oh God, you are the master." As long as you cannot say, "Oh Lord, thou alone are real," you will not be released from this life of the world. This going and coming, this rebirth, it's inevitable. There will be no liberation. Further, what can you achieve by saying, it is mine? The manager of an estate may say, this is our garden, these are our couches and our furniture. But when he is dismissed by the master, he doesn't even have the right to take away a chest of worthless mango wood, give it to him for his use, right? These all these things, what do we think defines us? All right, it's kind of a fun thing to think about that. You think, oh, this body defines me. Well, this body has changed significantly in the course of your life. But your I has always existed. Is the body really what the I is? No, of course not. We can see that there's nothing the same in this body as there was in my 6-month-old body, and yet my I is still here. It's circumstances. I'm an engineer. Well, there was a time when you weren't an engineer and you were still you. So is it what you do that defines you? Oh, I'm a father. Well, you might be, or you might not be at this moment, but were you always? The things that we're attached to that we think we can't live without. There was a time in your life when you were living without them. Don't forget that. This is how we discern, and this is how we learn, and this is how we understand. It's staying aware and discerning, watching to see what the truth is, right? That doership. We only get rid of that idea of doership by watching very closely how the mind works and how the body works and what our inner relationship with them is. And we begin to notice that we are not the doer, right? Because we depend on how many different variables that we have no control over in order for things to happen. And yet we take responsibility for them as if we made them happen, right? So it's this awareness, this inner seeing that will teach all of this to you, but you have to stop being distracted by all of your favorite thoughts and all of your favorite ideas and all of your favorite activities and all of your favorite sensations, and getting rid of the aversions too, which is the opposite of all those things, but there's still a form of attachment. So we have to know that God alone is real, that God alone is. God is the master, that we do not control our little dominion that we think that we do. We've been allowed to think that so we can get it out of our system. So that, yes.
When you were talking a while back, about whoever it was who couldn't even take the simple trunk of valueless fruit wood or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in a family where every gift had a string attached to it.
Sure. You grew up in a world that we're all growing up in.
The minute you disagreed, it got reeled back in. So isn't that, and I found that very offensive because it wasn't really an unconditional gift. It came completely packaged in conditions.
Sure.
That you operate the way we want, and this is our gift to you for doing that. But it's not a gift; it's a entrapment. And so what I didn't understand, I guess it's my own attitude of, wow, he's in a monastery and all this. There should be a higher value of thinking in that. But when it turns out he can't even leave with a cheap trunk of fruit wood that was a gift, and I believe you use the word gift. Maybe that's what I heard.
Right.
How do I join those two?
Well, what he's saying here is that's not really the point of what he's talking about. What he's talking about here is right now you sit in your house and you look around and you think, oh, that's my book and that's my dresser and that's my art and that's my window and this is my apartment.
Right.
The second after you die,
it's not.
You can't take even the stupid little piece of napkin that's left over from your morning cup of coffee.
That's why I haven't gotten that sheet that tells me what I can take with me.
All right. See, that's his point. He's like, we live under this delusion of me and mine. that we're in charge, that we own, that we're related to things. But as soon as the body drops, all of that goes away. It's instantly not true. And so learn from that, discern, think about that, and have that attitude about the things around you. Understand, yes, you can enjoy them. Yes, they're there to be used. Yes, as long as they exist, no problem. But understand that they won't always exist, that they haven't always existed, and that they have nothing to do with you. And live amongst them, but don't live for them,
So
right?
you're a caretaker.
Yeah.
That's
So
why I
it's
look
like, what's that?
I look at, I think I've discussed that with you, with all
Mhm.
the art that my house is filled with.
Yeah.
It's not my art. It belongs to the artist, where I'm just taking care of it because
Well,
I have an
the art,
appreciation.
the artist is no more real than you are.
Right, right.
So if it doesn't belong to you, it certainly doesn't belong to the artist, right?
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so even
Okay,
that attachment, even that idea is a form of attachment.
I
So it's
see.
like it's just
It's not pushing my attachment on somebody else.
right. Just let everything be as it is, but just make sure that you're seeing it as it is, not as you want it to be.
Okay,
That's what he's saying here.
thank you.
Surely. The feeling of I and mine has covered the reality. Okay, it is what is preventing you from seeing God. At this moment, every one of us at this moment is seeing only God. But because of our habit of discerning, of separation, right? Because of our habit of seeing ourselves separate and apart from the whole, as because of our having preferences and aversions, we can't see the unity. Because we depend on our senses, the unity is immediately broken into 5 pieces to feed to us. This singularity of God has to be pressed through 5 senses to get into our mind. It has to come in as a touch. It has to come in as a taste. It has to come in as a smell. It has to come in as a sound. It has to come in as a visual, right? And then the mind is frantically trying to take these 5 disparate things and create a unity out of it through relationship. That's what the mind is doing. It's holding all of these grabbed pieces of information, and then the mind is trying to recreate the unity, the singularity, by drawing a big map of relationships between everything, trying to make everything one through relationship, because it's been given 5 disparate pieces. And as long as we're using the senses to collect our knowledge of God, it's going to be like that. What we have to do is turn around and go inward, leave the senses behind, because that emanation of God is actually happening from the inside out and not from the outside in. Turns out that there is no outside, and so we have to do a different thing than what we're accustomed to doing, which is why realization is quite difficult, because it's not so much that it's difficult, it's something that we have never done before. It requires a completely different set of tools for knowing than what we normally use for knowing, because it's 2 different types of knowledge, right? There's an
Is that why
inherent.
we're afraid of, is that why
What's
we're
that?
afraid of death? Because the body is what defines our outside. And if we let the body go, we just expand. I mean,
Uh,
sometimes, you know,
no, because no, what you realize is that you were not in the body was in you. That's what you'll realize. You were not in a world. The world was within you. That's what you realize when the body drops. The body is the thing that makes you think you're particular, that you are a perspective, a given vantage point. But when the body drops off, if you've prepared, or, then you'll either grab another body in a panic, which is what most people will do, or grab something to hide in our fear, and that becomes our next birth. Or we march freely straight into the light, uh, unabashed, unafraid, because of grace, because of familiarity, because we have sat for hours in the presence. We know that presence, we're familiar with that presence, and we surrender our individuality, we surrender our separateness, and we return to our nature, to that one without a second. And then that's liberation. So liberation is realizing that all of this is your dream, and that you are the container of it. You are not the particular actor in the dream. You are the dream itself and more.
So as a particular, we see ourselves separate.
Yes.
We see ourselves as a piece of a puzzle.
Yes. Well, we all see ourselves differently, but yes, in general, we're a part of a whole. But we're separate. Okay. The feeling of I and mine has covered the reality. So that's the fundamental problem. This notion of I and mine, this being separate from apart from the whole, and then wanting and grabbing disparate things for our fulfillment. So this feeling of I and mine has covered reality. Because of this, we do not see truth. Attainment of Chaitanya, divine consciousness, is not possible without the knowledge of Advaita, non-duality, right? Which is what will happen when you know yourself not to be a particular. When you know yourself not to be the character in the dream, but you realize that you're dreaming and that the entire dream is you, that is what has to happen in order for you to wake up, to know the truth of the dream. After realizing Chaitanya, one enjoys Nityananda, eternal bliss. One enjoys this bliss after attaining the state of Paramahamsa, this state of oneness. So this bliss you become aware of because you're no longer distracted by the changing mind. So you become aware of those things in you that are not changing, a steady hum of bliss, the steady presence of wisdom, of an expansive, infinite wisdom, and the true essence of the moment, your unmoving, absolute experience of existence, of being, which I used a lot of words in there you can't use because no words can be used. So we have to use poetry to point at this reality. Vedanta, as a philosophy, in the Vedanta term within philosophy, does not recognize the incarnation of God. According to it, Chaitanya Deva is only a bubble of the non-dual Brahman. Right? Do you know what the vision of divine consciousness is like? It is like the sudden illumination of a dark room when a match is struck. The incarnation of God is accepted by those who follow the path of bhakti, right? So this might be a little confusing because here in the West we use the Vedanta to describe really what is the Sanatana Dharma. Really, we talk about Vedanta as a society, as like a church with a set of beliefs, but in its original context, Vedanta means non-dualism, right? That God is one without a second. And so these other philosophies or these other paths, like bhakti, like jnana, like Raja Yoga, all these, Patanjali's aspect. I mean, I think there's 9 different categories or philosophies in there. And the incarnation of God belongs to the bhaktis, to those who are practicing devotion as the path to the divine. So the incarnation of God is accepted by those who follow the path of bhakti. A woman belonging to the Kartapaja sect observed my condition and remarked, "You have inner realization. Don't dance and sing too much. Ripe grapes must be preserved carefully in cotton. The mother-in-law lessens her daughter-in-law's activities when the daughter-in-law is with child. One characteristic of God realization is that the activities of a man with such realization gradually drop away. Inside this man," meaning Sri Ramakrishna, "is the real jewel." Right? So all she's saying there is like, once you know God, once you've known God to be one without a second, once you've known that you without ego are God, that you without the sense of me and mine are this unbounded universal self, At that point, the practice of religion is not so important to you. You know, your daily practice, your bhajans, your japam, all of those things, they fall away because they've fulfilled their purpose, right? They've done their job. And once the job is done, there's no need for them. It's Ramakrishna says it's like a grocery list. You know, religion is like a grocery list. It's a list of all the things you need to get. But once you've read that list, gone to the grocery store, gotten all those things, you toss the list away. It's no longer important. And so religion is that list. And there does come a part. That's why Vivekananda says it's great to be born in a church, but what a disaster to die in one. It means that we should transcend these particulars. We should come to know and get our ego out of the way of the manifestation of our divine love, which is what we are. You know, and that once that divine love is expressing, nothing else is necessary. Once the ego has been dismantled through awareness, right, through detachment and the practices of renunciation and discernment, once that ego is dismantled, oh, there's no need for the rest of it anymore. You are manifesting spontaneously in the moment the presence of God, of your divine nature. He goes on to talk about this woman who was of this sect who's looking at him. Watching me eat, she remarked, "Sir, are you yourself eating or are you feeding someone else?" Right? So it's this knowledge of, are you aware that you are not the doer, is what she's asking. Are you feeding? Are you eating? Is your ego present? Do you see yourself as the doer? Or are you feeding someone else? Do you know that you are the divine who's feeding this particular body? Right? The feeling of ego, which is the feeling of me and mine or I, the feeling of ego has covered the truth, right? It's the matter, it's when you identify yourself with mind, that this ego really is born. When this infinite self moves into the mind, the world of thought, the world of constant change, it's constantly distracted from itself by the flickering of constant change, the glamour of constant change, or the terror of constant change. And it's paying so much attention to that, it forgets everything else. It's covered. The truth has been covered by this illusion of constant change. The feeling of ego has covered the truth. Narendra once said, "As the eye of man recedes, the eye of God approaches." Kedar says, "The more clay there is in the jar, the less water it holds." Right? So as our ego diminishes, that which we truly are begins to shine through. And all of this awareness is not something that we've added to ourselves, but we start becoming aware of all of the still and silent, peaceful things that have always been there, but we've always been distracted from because of our concern about the future, our love of the past, and all of the fantastical ideas that run through our head in a day, and all of the changing senses, all right, which all of that can fall under thought. All of those things are thoughts. Krishna said to Arjuna, "Brother, you will not realize me if you possess even one of the 8 siddhis. These give only a little power. With healing and the like, one may only do a little good to others. Isn't that true? Therefore, I prayed to the Divine Mother for pure love only, a love that does not seek any return." So this is that love you're looking for there, Peter, in that gift giving. A gift that comes with no requirements, no strings. So what we're wanting to do is become the giver of such a gift, to be able to give, not just a gift, to be able to give this life without any strings, without any requirements. And we do that by praying to the Divine Mother for pure love alone, nothing else. A love that does not seek any return. I never asked for occult powers. While talking thus, Sri Ramakrishna went into a deep samadhi. He sat there motionless, completely forgetful of the outer world, and then coming down to the sense world, he sang, "Ah, friend, I have not found him yet, whose love has driven me mad." All right, what a beautiful place to halt for the night here.